Back cover copy is one of those things that you don't really think about until you have to. Until your book has been written and you're sitting at the computer staring at a blank cover, or you're staring at a blank document ready to type your query letter. But these might be the most important words that you write in this whole process, more important than even your first page. This is what people will read before they decide to buy your book or put it back on the shelf. So how do you approach writing such an important selling point of your novel? In this video, I'm going to tell you what to focus on in your back cover copy, what to include and what not to include, and some tips for making it more effective. The main focus of your back cover copy should be to highlight the conflict and not just what happens in your story. Of course, the back cover copy will tell you what happens. Readers are expecting that. But you don't just want to give the ABCs of what happens in your story. You want to tell them why they should be reading it. After all, back cover copy is marketing copy. You're trying to sell something here. So you need to highlight the conflict, what makes it interesting. Focus on these things: the main character, their goal and their motivations, what's standing in their way, and the setting, if that's important to your story. Framing your blurb or your back cover copy around the things that propel the plot will actually make it seem a lot more exciting than if just saying, this happens and this happens and this happens in my story. And typically, one of these four main things that you should be focusing on is also the hook of your story. It's that one detail that makes it different from all the rest of the stories in this genre. So you definitely want to highlight that in your back cover copy. Let you know what to write about. We're going to talk about how to perfect it. Number 1, keep this between 150 and 200 words. This is that sweet spot of feeling complete, but still being concise. Number 2, you need to mention your main character's name and the world that they live in, whether that's a contemporary world, a historical setting, or even a whole fantasy world that you've created. Typically, you can just do this in the first sentence, and I'm going to give you an example. This is from Rules of Civility, the first sentence of the back cover copy. On the last night of 1937, 25-year-old Katie Content is in a second-rate Greenwich Village jazz bar when Tinker Gray, a handsome banker, happens to sit at the neighboring table. Okay, so in that first sentence, we got what year it is and the settings around the night that these two main characters meet, their age, that they're in Greenwich Village in New York, both of their names, even occupations, and that's just in one sentence. Number 3, match the tone of your book. Your back cover copy should read the same as the tone of your novel. So if you wrote in first person, you maybe want to consider writing the back cover copy in first person in your main character's voice as well. And if your book is in third person, just think about matching the tone. Is this book funny and comical? Is it adventurous and mysterious? Or is this action-packed and serious? You want the words that you use to convey that tone. So actually take a look at what you already wrote. Point out some of the verbs, the adjectives you used, and what tone do each of those words convey? Is there a synonym that might match the tone of your story a little bit better? Or is there a way you can reword things to give it more of a casual feel if that's what your main character's voice is, or more of an intense feel? Because this copy is so short, you really need every word to count, and just making a few switches here and there can really impact the tone of the writing. Number 4, lead with your hook. Now, I already mentioned the hook before. This is the thing about your story that makes it different from all the rest. And often this is in the form of a question or a fact. And a lot of times you'll see these hooks on the front cover or the back cover of books, because the purpose is to grab the reader's attention and pull them in so that they read the rest of the copy. So I'll give you a couple of examples. In The Perfect Marriage, this hook is right on the front cover. His mistress is dead, his wife is his only hope. That right there is really going to grab the reader and draw them in so that they will read the rest of the back cover. And here's another one from Everything Everything. Live life in a bubble or risk everything for love. And this is actually the first sentence of their back cover. So you can see how this could be really effective in including in your back cover copy. Number 5, don't give everything away. Now, everybody knows that you don't want to say what's going to happen at the end of your story in your back cover copy. It's pretty obvious. But you also don't want to say what the climax of the story is. And I see a lot of authors making this mistake in romance novels because readers pretty much know what's going to happen at the end. The couple's going to end up together. The really important part of the story is the climax and the conflict and the problems that happen, leading usually to the third act breakup, and how they resolve those problems. So if you include that content in your back cover copy, you're pretty much giving everything away for the reader. But what you want to do is introduce the characters, set up the world that they live in, and maybe even how they meet, and then gives a sense of maybe what direction the relationship will go in and maybe what problem will arise, but just end there. You don't really want to give away all the details. The goal is to say just enough to get the reader to want to open up the book and find out what happens. And this ties into number 5, but number 6 is you don't have to end it with a question to leave the reader wanting more. A question can be effective, but it's not always the most effective way, and it can be really overused and sometimes even patronizing to the reader if the question is obvious. So again, let's look at the perfect marriage. I'm going to read you the last paragraph of the back cover copy. Out in the secluded woods at the couple's lake house, Adam engages in a passionate affair with Kelly Summers. But one morning, everything changes. Kelly is found brutally stabbed to death, and now Sarah must take on her hardest case yet, defending her own husband, a man accused of murdering his mistress. And that's where it ends. We don't see the question of, but is Adam innocent or guilty? And we don't see, but will Sarah be able to overcome her hurt and save her husband? Those are really obvious questions. The reader is already asking themselves those questions because it's implied in the back cover copy. So it's actually more effective to leave those questions out altogether than to just tack them on to the end because it feels like you have to. And the last one here is number 7, break up the text in a way that makes it easy to read. So we kind of already talked about how to make the copy intriguing so readers want to read it, but I just want to touch on briefly how to make it easy for them to read visually. So you might hear this concept a lot in web design, but the idea of white space is really important. And having that white space breaks up the paragraphs and the text so that it's in bite-sized little bits of information rather than in just a big chunk. And you'll see this on pretty much every back cover. You'll see maybe the text is set off by larger font, different color, space between the paragraphs, even space between line to line. It's all really important to just help our brain process information. So particularly if you're an indie author, just keep that in mind when you're both writing and designing the back cover. And here's one more little bonus thing. I just wanted to touch briefly on endorsements. Do you need them? For most people, I'm gonna say no, you really don't need them. Unless you can get an author who is a well-known name, well-respected, and someone who's relevant to your genre. The whole point of having an endorsement is having someone's name attached to yours so that it boosts your credibility and boosts trust with your readers. So if the only people you can find for your endorsements are your cousin, your grandma, your best friend, or some girl you went to college with, then the endorsement is not really doing what it's meant to do, and it can actually hurt your marketing rather than help it. But that is everything that you need to know about back cover, what to put on it, how to write it, how to make it better. If you have any other questions about different types of marketing copy for your book, or maybe how to get those connections so that you can have endorsements for your book, leave a comment below and I'll try to address those in a different video. But thank you all for watching.